Okay, good afternoon, grade 11 CAT students. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your commitment again. Thank you. It's nice to see you guys again here, Mikhail, Mercedes, Ben. Thank you guys. Appreciate the efforts of some of the students that are here. Ben, I do have your message, and I'll try and forward it to you again. If not, then I'll just respond right at the end of the lesson. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. If you guys want to catch any of the other lessons that have been recorded, you can go to the YouTube channel Africa Teen Geeks and just search for grade 11 CAT, and you should be able to find any of the lessons that were recorded in the last 8 weeks. The lessons that we had done in the last few weeks was Microsoft Access. And this week, what we have been focusing on is we've been focusing on a section called information management. Now, it's a tricky section to kind of get the hang of because it's a theory section that really has to be taken into consideration when you are doing a practical work. So what we are doing is we are looking at how to go about completing your practical assessment task. Now, the lessons completed over here should also apply to matric. So once you have got a good understanding of the section of work that we are covering, then it should kind of benefit and help you going into matric as well when you are completing your PAT. Just a reminder of the importance of the PAT. Your practical assessment task counts 25% of your year. So let's say, for example, you get 80% for your PAT, you're already sitting with 20% for the year, which is a huge benefit for you in terms of boosting your mark at the end of the year. If you guys have any questions while I'm going through this content, please feel free to send me a message on the chat, and I'll try and assist and answer the questions that you have. Like I've said in all my previous lessons, if you come across any question or section of work that you don't understand, please email me as well. I know a couple of students have emailed me already, so thank you very much for that. I will email you directly after this lesson. So if you have emailed me, then thank you very much. I will message you and respond to your emails directly after this lesson. So for those of you that asked for resources, it's coming your way after this lesson. So what we are focusing, like I said, is information management, and particularly how to take this content and then apply it to your practical assessment task. What we are focusing on today is we are focusing on exporting and importing, and then tips, tools and techniques that you can use in order to process the data that you have collected. So what we had a look at yesterday was the information management cycle. And the cycle is seen on the screen over here, and it's really the process that you need to follow in order to complete your PAT. So first of all, we looked again at analyzing the task at hand. So once you have selected a task, really deciding how to go about completing that task. So coming up with your task definition as well as your focus question was key in that first component over there. The second part was what data is needed. So starting to come up with some questions that will guide your research assignment and provide you with valuable information that will then fill up your assignment that you are doing. The third step was where to get the data. And we looked at this on Monday, where we looked at various sources for information. So we had a look at electronic media, we had a look at printed media, and as well as questionnaires and interviews that you could do with various individuals. Then once you have collected that, once you have identified places to get the data from, The next step is actually getting the data and checking that the data is correct. The step that we are focusing on today is really the processing of the data. So it's the step after you've gathered all the information and done all of your research and checked all of the data that you have collected. The step that we're focusing on is the step after that, which is how do we process the data and where do we process the data and how do we kind of go about completing this task over here. Okay, so the information management skills is getting a clear understanding of the task definition. So this is what we focused on at the beginning of the analyzing of the task at hand. So we looked at creating a clear understanding of what the problem is. So why are we doing the project, or why are we completing this research assignment? The second part of that task definition was looking at the outcome. What do we want the outcome of our assignment to be? And then the third part of our task definition was stating how we intended to go about completing the task at hand. So this is what we already know and what we should already understand how to do. The second step that you should already know how to do is asking the right questions. So formulating, as I stated yesterday, a questionnaire which consists of about 20 questions, as well as 10 sort of research questions. So in total, 30 questions that will guide the research and the data that you are collecting. So we have to understand what the task is, and then how to ask the right questions, which is going to gain us information that allows us to create a solution for the problem at hand. We then identified the data sources, like we said, and then evaluating the quality of data. So basically checking where the data and the information that we are researching is coming from, and whether or not that data and information is valuable, is accurate, is correct, and can be trusted. Because we should know that not everything on the internet is trustworthy. So if you go to the first website based on a topic that you're researching and pull out that information, it may be it may be that information is incorrect and not accurate. So very important that when we are researching, we don't just look at one specific website. We cross-check with multiple websites that the information that we are gathering is correct and accurate. So today, like we said, we are working on processing the data. And what today's software allows us to do is it allows us to work with a large amount of data and information. The great thing about Microsoft Word, Excel, and Access is that we can store this data electronically. Back in the day, large files and hundreds of files had to be kept with records and data that was collected. Now, some companies still do that. The risk of that is that, if something happens, if there's a fire or if those files get lost or aren't stored correctly, then that data is lost forever. The great thing about technology these days is that you are able to store things electronically, and the chance that it goes missing is really slim. So we've already worked with Microsoft Word, we've looked at Microsoft Excel, and a few weeks ago we worked with Access. Now these are all the programs that you are going to be using within your PAT. The last one that you need to use is Notepad++, which allows you to create your website. But essentially, these are the main programs that allows you to store data and allows you to work with large quantities of data in a quick and accurate manner. The processing of the data is quick and accurate, like I said, and you are able to present the data and information in the most appropriate formats. So instead of using only one application, so like Microsoft Word, to do your research, to do your calculations, to do your queries, you are able to use multiple programs that all have a specific function and work well within processing the data that you need. Just a reminder that you will need to use Microsoft Word, Excel, and Access in your PAT. Your Word program, your Microsoft Word, will allow you to create the task definition as well as the focus question. So essentially what you're doing in Microsoft Word is you are laying out the framework and the structure of what your research project will look like. You'll answer questions within Microsoft Word. You'll create a table within Microsoft Word where you're able to type in questions and then also create summaries on these questions as well. What you do in Excel for your PAT is you're going to be creating a questionnaire which people obviously need to fill out. What you're going to do in Excel is then capture the data that you have gained from the questionnaires that you sent out, and from there create calculations as well as functions that allow you to kind of conclude specific to make conclusions about specific questions that you have asked. You can also create charts over here and diagrams that allow you to visually represent the information that you have captured. And then the last one is the storing of the data in Access, where you are able to then filter and sort and create queries and also reports based on the information that you found. And then the last step is essentially presenting the data with Notepad++ using HTML. Okay, so just a few things in terms of processing your data that you need to understand. You need to understand exporting and importing. When we export data, we are sending or transferring the data from one format source to another. So basically if Microsoft Access is our database table source, and we decide that we want to export the data to Microsoft Excel, which is then the target location, we are basically transferring it from one to the next. So we're basically moving it from Access to Excel. Now, what you will need to do in your PAT is you will first, like we said, gather the information from the questionnaires as well as some of the research questions that you did. And from there, you need to transfer that data into Excel, into an Excel spreadsheet. So let's say, for example, you've created a Google form, and the Google form captures all your data. You will then transfer that data from Google Forms into a spreadsheet. That's one of the features that Google Forms allows you to do. It allows you to download all the data that you have captured into a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is set out quite nicely, so it's got the questions as well as all the data that you have captured. A reminder that all this needs to be done in your PAT. Once you have captured that data in Excel, it also needs to then be transferred. Once you've done all of your calculations and all of your charts, that data then needs to be transferred into Access. And this can be also done via exporting. Exporting can be done from Access to Excel and from Excel to Access. And generally what you do in your PAT is you take your data from Excel and you export it into Access. Importing is really fetching or bringing in a copy of the data from one file source and putting it into the current file formats. So this arrow should be the other way around, from Excel into Access. So we are basically taking data from Excel and transferring it into Access. So we're bringing it in. The main difference between exporting and importing is that in this instance over here, we are sending the data over here. So from this one over here, from Access to Excel, we are sending the data from one to the other, which means that the data over here will be lost and will be transferred over here. And importing is basically copying, so the data remains in both programs. Okay, exporting from Access. When we export from Access, the way that we do that is we open the database source from which you want to export. We then go into our navigation pane. We right click on the object that we'd like to move. We then click on export, and we select the format that we'd like to transfer into. So basically we can export our database. Let's say, for example, we are currently, you can see in Access over here because we've got a design view. If we right click on the object, for example, the table or the query or the form or the report that we've created, we are then able to select export, and we can export the data that is currently in the query or in the table into any one of these forms over here, into any one of these formats over here. So it's a nice simple feature that Access has for us, and most Microsoft, or I think all Microsoft programs have this feature where you are able to export and import data from one program into the next. So you click on export and a navigation pane will then pop up over here. And like I said, you can select any of the file formats that you would like over here. Okay, you then choose the file name and folder or the target location you want to export the object to. Okay, once you import into Access, or how to import into Access is by using the Access Wizard to guide you. You use the Access Wizard. So start off where you want to end up. So basically start, where you want to end. You import into an existing table or a new table. Columns should have labels. They become fields in the new database table. And then import from a text file, CSV file separates entry fields with a comma. So what they're saying over here is that if you'd like to import into Access, you must make sure that the data is in the correct columns already. And the columns right at the top, the row or the record right at the top in Excel will become the field in Access. So basically your column headings within Excel will be your field headings in Access. So make sure that when you are importing into Access from Excel, that you know exactly what data you want to import, and that also the columns have been manipulated and changed in a way that will make sense once it's in Access. Okay, importing into and exporting from Excel. You use commands in the Get External Data group on the Data tab to import data from various sources. Now, when we were working with Access, we had a look at some of the tabs within Access. However, there's some of the tabs that we didn't look at, and that was the Data tab. That Data tab is used for importing and exporting. So the tabs that we really had a look at was the Home tab, the Field tab, the Table tab, as well as the Create tab in Access. So it's really important that when you are exporting and importing, you know how to use that that data tab to import and export from various sources. You can also simply copy and access a table in database view and then paste it into Excel. So there are a number of ways which you can import and export. It's just up to you which way you prefer, and which way then is going to take the data from one source to the next in the most accurate manner. Okay, tips, tools, and techniques to process data. What you need to know the features of the programs and be skilled in using them. So I've said it quite a few times in Microsoft Access that when you are more familiar with a specific program, especially Microsoft Access, a lot of the students don't like using Microsoft Access and they become quite negative towards the program. It's important that you know how to navigate and find your way around specific features within a program. And once you become more familiar with programs and the features, it then becomes easier to answer the questions in the exam papers. Okay, so some other tips that you need to understand: decide if the data is in the best format to be processed effectively. So this is specifically for Excel. When you are transferring from Excel, data that's in Excel into Access, make sure that it's in the best format to be processed effectively. And we said that really in the column headings for Excel. Now, when you have column headings, some important features that you need to remember is that you shouldn't really have spaces, or it's not really advised to have spaces. You can have spaces within a field name, but try and make sure that question marks, spaces are taken out of Excel before you transfer into Access. Generally, when you are transferring data from Excel to Access, you aren't able to transfer the data, or the program will give you an error if you transfer and the column headings have got question marks, have got commas, have got spaces. So that's what they refer to over here when they say that data is in the best format to be processed effectively. So ensure, like I said, that you have manipulated, that you have processed the data effectively within Excel before you transfer it into Access. Okay. The next thing that you need to do is you need to figure out the most efficient way to complete the task. So this really comes down to the questions that you asked. If you ask the correct questions within your questionnaire as well as your research topics, then it's generally a little bit easier to complete the task. However, if you've asked questions that aren't really related to the topic and are difficult to grasp, then it becomes a little bit more difficult to complete the task, especially in this phase of the PAT where you have to analyze data, where you have to process the data and then present it. Okay, and then some other tools and tips and techniques to process the data. You may have to use different techniques to solve the problem. So remember that your task at the beginning that was given to you is requiring you to come up with a solution or something to solve the problem, which may mean that you need to think of creative ways of coming up with solutions or ways in which you can present the data in an effective way. Okay, getting into Excel. Excel is one of the harder sections within the practical section of your CAT curriculum, and generally it's because of the working with numbers and the functions that people kind of have to complete. A lot of people don't really enjoy this section as well. But again, if you are familiar with it and if you understand kind of the questions and you've spent a lot of time working on Excel, then you should get to a point where you realize how effective and how beneficial spreadsheets and Excel can be within a day-to-day life, even in businesses. Excel spreadsheets are really, really beneficial, and I think it's one of the most useful sections of work that you can actually study in school. I know, like, people say, oh, they don't really like the work at school because it's not relevant to what you're doing in real life. I promise you, Excel spreadsheets is one of the most relevant sections of work that you can study at school. Um, and no matter what field you're going to go into, you're going to have to use them at some points. So what you'll need to do in your PAT is you'll need to process the data that you've collected. Now, just a reminder about where we are in terms of completing this PAT. I'm trying to give you an overview of how we go about completing the PAT. Is we've analyzed the problem, we've created a task definition, we've created a focus question, we've now found ways to collect data, sources of collecting data. We've come up with about 30 questions to ask, some of them in a questionnaire, some of them as research questions. We've now gathered all that information together. We are at the stage where we need to now process the data. So, like I said, and I've been mentioning it a couple of times, the questions that you ask within your PAT to gain information are really, really important. You need to ask the right questions to get the right information that's going to give you the right solution for your PAT. Now, Excel provides us with a range of functions to perform arithmetic and statistical calculations. Some of the functions that you should be familiar with is sum, average, min, max, small, large, mode, median, count if, sum if. Okay, and you also get some other ones like nested if and concatenate functions. So these functions are really, really important when we are now processing our data within Excel. So one of the things that students often do is they ask questions that have only got responses that are in a word or text format. Now, you should realize that if you have a text answer, you aren't able to calculate what the sum of a text function is because it's got words in it. Sum works with numbers, average works with numbers, min works with numbers, max, small, large, those all work with numbers. Now, if you decide in your PAT that you are only going to ask questions that require people to answer with text or with words, then you're going to have a bit of an issue completing this section of work, which means that you now have to find creative ways of getting the data that you need. But if you are wise and if you are listening to this lesson, which I hope that you are, you will ask questions that require people to answer in a numerical value, at least some of the questions, so that you can perform these functions over here within your PAT. So questions like, let's say, for example, you are answering a question. I've used this topic for a little while now, the animal welfare topic. If you are asking questions on animal welfare, and you ask questions like, which animals do you think need most protection? Let's say, and you list dogs, cats, birds, horses. Those are obviously text answers. But if you ask questions like, in how many years do you think we can alleviate cruelty to animals? And you give them the options to choose from 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. You now have numerical values which you can work with within Excel. So very important that you ask the right questions so that you are able to process the data within your spreadsheets. Now, obviously you get some other functions like count if, where you are able to work with numbers as well, and with text as well. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to be able to perform Excel calculations within your within the data that you collected. And some of that data, or some of those calculations, will be based on text. Some of them will be based on numbers. And you need to be creating, you know, calculations or functions on different levels as well. So these ones over here would be considered basically a basic calculation. So like this would be a level 1 over here, sum, average, min, max, small, large. Those would generally be level 1 type calculations. Mode and median would be sort of your level 2, and then countif would sort of be your level 3 functions that you need to complete. And the more levels that you have, the more marks you get for your PAT as well. Okay, what you will need to do then is, once you've created your spreadsheet, and we spoke about importing and exporting, you will then need to export your data from Excel into a database, into Access. Or you'd need to take a database and then import your work into Access. And what essentially you're going to be doing from there is you're going to be creating queries based on the data that you have now manipulated within Excel. So you're going to be creating queries. You're going to be looking at input masks which we had a look at in the Access section. You will have to create validation rules, validation texts. You will have to manipulate the data within Access as well. So you might have to set some of the fields to various text sizes. You'll need to create a report, and that is all done within Access. This slide over here says this database is especially useful for working with larger amounts of data, performing complex queries on the data, grouping and presenting information, and then in professional looking reports as well. So you have to create a report in your PAT as well. Again, the PAT is outlined quite comprehensively. It gives you, like step-by-step sort of guides on what you need to do and what you need to complete and where you can gain your marks. And I would really encourage you guys to read through the learner guide as best possible, so that you can see where you get your marks from in your PAT. So what we're going to be looking at in the next lesson, that is not correct, task definition, information gathering, we already looked at that. We are going to be looking at, just get it over here. We are going to be looking at presenting the results. So if you go back to that diagram that we had a look at the beginning of the lesson, where we analyzed the task at hand, we found out what data we needed, and then we started processing the data. We are now looking at the end product in how we present the data as a final product, which is kind of a big section of work and also important section of work, because you've kind of done all the hard work. You now just need to make your data look good and present it in a way that people will understand and be able to easily interpret the solution to your problem. Guys, if I can ask you to please try, and what we're going to do, or just for the lesson on Friday, we're going to be looking at doing a Kahoot quiz. So if you can please just make sure that Kahoot works. Just look, I'm not sure if any of you guys have done Kahoot. You can let me know if you have. We're going to be doing a Kahoot quiz based on this work on Friday. So yeah, just make sure that you know how to use Kahoot, and you can download it on your phone as well. It's quite a nice app to use. You can do quizzes, and it's basically we competing against each other to see who knows their work the best. Yeah, so thank you guys again for being here. Reminder that you can contact me, aflint@newtonhouse.co.za. You can also follow us at Africa Teen Geeks. If you have any questions, please you feel free to contact me in the chat. I know that there were some questions. The name of the app is Kahoots, so I'll just post it into the for everyone to see over here. www.kahoots. There we go. That's the name of the website or the name of the app over there. It's Kahoots. It's basically like an online quiz that we do against each other, and yeah, it's got some cool features. I'll create a quiz for us, and yeah, we'll play against each other on Friday. So it's obviously going to be based on the work that we've done over this week, so based on information management. Yeah, so thanks, guys. Ben, I see that you did have a question there. Let me just respond to it now. Oh, sorry, Ben. I'm just going to read out your question. It said, here teachers are returning back on the school on the 25th of this month. Oh, yeah. So you guys probably would have heard that the Minister of Education spoke to us yesterday, and teachers are able to return to school on the 25th of March. This is not guaranteed for all schools. So some schools may be returning on the 25th, other schools not. And then most matrics will be able to return on the 1st of June. Now, again, this isn't guaranteed for all schools, but some schools, matrics will be returning on the 1st of June. These classes will continue. So we'll still have these online classes if you need them. You are still welcome to attend. And then we will notify you if there's any changes to these lessons or if they're ending for some reason. But for the time being, these lessons will continue at 4 o'clock. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Ben. Okay, so just a reminder of the lesson for Friday. Make sure that you know how to use Kahoots. Thank you guys for being here, and then I will see you tomorrow where we're looking at presenting your PAT as a final product, and then yeah, the lesson on Friday is going to be a quiz to play against each other. Thanks for being here, guys.